Kids, y'all, you're going back to your class. Eileen, who's back here today? Okay. just makes it easier that way, huh? All right, all right. Awesome. But Shalom, guys. Isn't awesome. You know, when we turn ourselves to Him, how many of you, when you first gave your life to Yahweh, you're like, I don't know what to expect, but there's got to be something better than this. You know, we've seen where we're at in our life, and let's face it, when Yahweh redeems us, He redeems us from something, and often it's a lot of the things that we just don't know what else to do. You know, we're in the world, we're learning the ways of the world, we're learning life, and many people out here are just trying to survive. But Yah has something greater for you. It's more than just about trying to survive the world. It's about having a life that's worth living. It's about having a life that's rich, that's abundant with Yahweh in it. And, you know, Yeshua said, I come that they may have life and have it how? Abundant life, right? Well, what does that mean? That means a life full of Yahweh, a life full of a relationship with Him, full of His ways, His heart, following with Him in a place that just we couldn't fathom any other way. It's hard to put into words, really, what a relationship with Yahweh really is and what it really means. But it can be summed up, and we all have our own ways of doing it. But you know, we can sum it up with, wow. You know, it's a completely different world for us. And even though we didn't go through like what Israel went through in Mitzrayim. You know, we're in the time frame between Pesach and Shavuot. We're counting the Omer, we're counting the weeks, counting the days, getting ready for that. And in that, we're focusing in that life right here, right now. Okay, if you haven't got that yet, that's the focus of these weeks that we're in. It's like, okay, we're redeemed. That was Pesach's all about redemption, right? We've been redeemed, but now what? You know, now that Yahweh's redeemed you, it's not just go back and do whatever it was that you did before. You know, now that He's redeemed you, He gives you His word to equip you to walk in a way that blesses you, that blesses Him, and is a blessing to others. And that's what Shavuot's about. Because redemption isn't complete until He brought them to Himself. You say He's going to redeem Israel, and He brought them out of Mitzrayim, He brought them out of bondage, He brought them out of oppression, He brought them out of all these things. But if He would have just freed them in Mitzrayim and then said, okay, guys, I'm going to give you land that's that way, I'll see you when you get there. That's not the point, is it? See, He led them through the way where they followed Him, and He brought them to the mountain. And if you go back and you read the story, you know, how many of you have always thought about it before you really looked at it? It said, so when Moses went to Pharaoh, it was the whole idea behind the whole thing was let my people go so that they can go to this land of Israel, right? But that's not what was said. What was said was let my people go that they can go into the wilderness and hold a festival to me. The purpose of them coming out was to go to the mountain. The purpose of them coming out was to go to be at Sinai, Mount Sinai, and be there at the base of the mountain, to meet with the one who redeemed them, to hear His word, to have Him revealed to them, to enter into this place of knowing who He is and knowing who He's called you to be. Then go forward into the promise that He has. See, because without that mountain experience, without that wilderness experience, the redemption wasn't complete. When we think about wilderness, a lot of times we think about just the dry, the hot, the desert, whether it's physically or spiritually, right? And it's just all that. But in the wilderness is where Yahweh actually and literally revealed Himself to His people. And it's in there that we learn not just who we are, but who He is. And so we can say He redeemed us, but if He redeems you, He doesn't just redeem you from something, He redeems you for something. That's what we talk about this time in here. We're going to talk about the Redeemer of Israel. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to touch a little bit on Pesach because that's where we're coming from. And then we're looking towards Shavuot. And we're going to touch briefly on Ruth because there's an emphasis on Ruth during Shavuot. They normally read the book of Ruth on Shavuot. Why? Redemption. So we're going to cover all these today. All right? You guys ready? All right, let's jump into that. Hopefully this is working. All right. So Redeemer. Redeemer. The word for Redeemer is goel. Okay, it's from the word gaal. Redeemer means like to redeem something. Well, yeah, that makes sense, right? How do you define a term with the same term, right? Anyway, so what does it mean? Okay, literally, it's to be the next of kin. Okay, it is someone who can take a legal right of responsibility to help you in a situation that you're in. Someone to purchase you out of a place that you were. Someone to redeem you. Redeem basically means purchase. Okay? So this is what we're looking at. Geulah is redemption, restoring something, either a land, a house, a person, or a proper place that had been foretold. So all of this falls under the idea of to be redeemed. Normally it is the next of kin because they hold a place of responsibility for their brother. You know, you may have heard the line, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, yes you are, to a degree. Because it is our responsibility to help one another. Okay, now you can't make anybody do anything, right? But we do need to help each other out. We do need to help keep each other accountable and to do that. Now, a redeemer, if someone had brought themselves to a place to where, here's an example, they owed a debt they couldn't pay, they basically sold themselves into service to work off the debt. But if I'm a next of kin, then I can say, well, why is my brother doing that? Because I can pay the price he couldn't. So I pay that price for him, thereby setting him free. When we say that Messiah has redeemed us, understand he paid a price for you that you owed, you could not pay. The wages of sin is he could pay something you could not. So when he redeemed you, he brought you out of that. But he didn't do that just so, okay, now you fell down, and I'm going to bring you out of this. You're free. I'm going to dust you off. I'm going to clean you up. I'm going to set you right here. I'll catch you later. And gone. No. He says, now that I've brought you to this place, I want you to follow me. And that's where we go to the mountain, and that's where we learn. Right? And it's a step by step. It's along the way, right? Okay. So let's take a quick look back at Exodus 15. Verse 13, it says, you in your loving kindness, you led the people, you have what? Redeemed. You guided them in your strength to your holy habitation. See that? When Yahweh brought Israel out of Mitzrayim, he redeemed them. When he brought them out, he said he redeemed them, and then he brought them to his holy habitation. He brought them to himself. Isaiah 62 says, behold, Adonai is proclaimed to the end of the earth. Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your salvation comes. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. Then they will call them the holy people, the who? The redeemed of Adonai, and you will be called sought out, a city not forsaken. Interesting thing in here, it says, behold, your salvation comes, and his reward is with him, which means your salvation is a person. And his reward is with him. See that? Yah redeemed you. And when he did, he gave you a purpose. And that purpose is to be in relationship with him. Now learn to walk with him. You know? It's very simple. Take his hand, now learn to walk. When you're learning to walk, you fall a few times, don't you? So what happens after that? Yeah, you get up and you keep going. So that's how we need to do our life with Yahweh. We need to continue to move forward and continue to take those steps. As long as we're taking steps forward, it doesn't matter the size of the steps. As long as we're taking steps forward, we're moving forward, right? The thing is, when Yahweh brought them into the wilderness, they kind of had an idea what direction they were going, but they could only go so far at a time. 40 years in the wilderness, and how many encampments? 42. You thought you moved a lot. And then consider that even in the moving from place to place to place, it was never recorded that any of the tabernacle, any piece was missing. And all the moves they made. That's a miracle. Right? I moved 5 miles down the road and can't find half the house. I'm not exaggerating. That's the way it was. So here, 42 times, and not one piece of the tabernacle was missing. God's good. Because he was showing us, my presence goes with you, not a piece of it is missing. Not a piece of what I have for you is missing. It's all there. But even in that, there were those that were instructed in specific tasks along the way. Why? So that they could go to the next destination and fulfill their purpose. That's what Yahweh's doing with us. Okay? Keep going. So Yahweh redeemed Israel. When they came out of Mitzrayim, there was more happening than just rescuing from oppression. Again, this is what we've talked about. Yahweh was showing the right of a redeemer, like a father, or next of kin, brother. So how does Yahweh have the right to redeem? How does he have the right to redeem you? Because you can't just redeem someone. You had to have an access to them to do so. Well, put it this way. Craftsman has the right to redeem what he created. He created you. You belong to him. And so if you end up in this place, he can redeem you out of the mess that we've made for ourselves. Because he has the right to do it. And it's back to covenant relationship. Okay? All right. Leviticus 25. Let's go back and take a quick look at it. Leviticus 25:24 says, "And in all the country that you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land," even a redemption of the land that was there. It's interesting. "If your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold. If a man has no one to redeem it, and then himself becomes prosperous and finds sufficient means to redeem it," verse 27, "let him calculate the years since he has sold it and pay back the balance to the man to whom he sold it, and then return to his property. But if he has not sufficient means to recover it, then what he sold shall remain in the hand of the buyer until the year of" what? "Until the year of Jubilee, until the Yovel. And in the Yovel it shall be released, and he shall return to his property." Interesting, because Scripture says that in the land of Israel, nobody owns land in Israel. But didn't Yahweh give the land to the people? Yes, he did. But he also told them, the land is mine. I'm giving it to you to dwell on, but the land is mine. See? And when they were dispersed into their tribal allotments, when they crossed over, when they went in, again, Yahweh said, "These are the properties that I'm giving you, that I am designating for you, for your families, by tribe, by tribe, by tribe. But the land itself is mine." That's why, interesting, even today, you don't buy land in Israel. So biblically, the way they did it was you bought the years until the next Jubilee. In other words, if the Jubilee was last year, that piece of land is going to cost you more this year. In 10 years, it'll cost you less. How's that for a real estate market? Makes a point, doesn't it? It definitely makes a point. Because the point is, the land doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Yahweh. And so what you're doing is if it's a farm, you're buying the amount of crops that it has until the Jubilee. But interesting that even in the counting of that, even in the counting of the years, and even in the land itself, you're counting towards the Jubilee. You're counting towards redemption and freedom. See, so what's the point of it all? What's the purpose of it all? The purpose of even the land itself is you don't belong to you. You belong to Yahweh. Okay. So what about the Jubilee? Okay, let's take a quick look at that. Then we'll tie the threads together. Jubilee, Yovel, cannot be declared until all the tribes return home. Jubilee cannot be declared until all Israel comes back. Why? That's what the Scripture says. It could not be pronounced without knowing all the tribes. Leviticus 25:10, it says, "You are to consecrate the 50th year, proclaiming freedom throughout the land" to who? All its inhabitants. Well, who were the all that were to inhabit the land? That's all Israel, isn't it? All the people who were called by his name. The Jubilee couldn't be declared until all who belonged to Yahweh could hear the call to return and come back. It says it will be a Yovel to you, and you will return who? Everyone. to the land that he owns, and who? Everyone is to return to his property. There's a point when all will look towards Jerusalem for home, whether now or in the New Jerusalem. There's a point all will look to Jerusalem for home. 12 gates. What are the names on the gates? 12 tribes. You got to go in through one of them. Does it really matter which? No, not really, but you got to go in through one of them. Yahweh says he is going to gather all his people, all his family, Israel, and all those that join with them to come back home. But believe that when the Messiah comes, he will return all the people to the land, and he will declare the Jubilee. Why would he have the right to do that? Because they didn't keep the Jubilee years. You understand that's why they were exiled? Because it's every 6 year they were to work the land, and then the 7th year the land was to rest, and after so many of these in the Jubilee year, right? Well, they didn't let the land rest in those years, so they were exiled 490 years. Why? Because of disobedience, because they did not let the land observe its Shabbat. And how many times do we see of Israel being exiled and then a return, and an exile and then a return, and an exile and then a return? Let me ask you, is all Israel home? Not yet. People are starting to open their eyes. People are starting to have a heart for Yahweh, a heart for his word, and a heart for his people, and even a heart for the land. They think there's so much fighting over the single most piece of land on the earth that people are fighting over is Israel. And it's about the size of New Jersey. Seriously, guys. And the whole world's fighting over Israel. Why? Because Yahweh said that's his land for his people. The whole world that don't want that to happen. There is an adversary, right? Okay. So it's believed that the Jubilee will be declared by the Messiah, and the Messiah will bring all back. So the Jubilee, when is the Jubilee declared? On one specific day. What day? Yom Kippur. Yom HaKippurim. So this day, why is there a tie between Yom Kippur and Yovel? Between Yom Kippur and Jubilee? And then, just because of the tying in with these things as well, then we're also tying in the 7 years, the 49 years, the 50th year, and then the tie between Passover and Shavuot. Tell me these things aren't connected. Why? Yeshua made a declaration in Luke 4. He started to speak to them, and he says, "Today, as you have heard this passage read of the Tanakh was fulfilled," quoting from Isaiah 61, when it was given to him to unroll the scroll, he read from Isaiah. He spoke of the work of the Messiah, and he said, today this is being done. He's saying the start of this Jubilee work, the start of this people coming back home, the start of setting the people free, the start of the oppression going away, and all this is happening now. Starting to see it. So, Messiah will declare the Yovel, which has to mean this, that the Messiah will gather all Israel. The Messiah will gather all those that are scattered, and all those that are joined with them. Look, Matthew 15. Yeshua says, "I was sent only to whom? The lost sheep of the house of Israel." Romans 11:17 says, "But if one of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others, now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree. Do not be arrogant toward the branches, for if you are, remember, it is not you who support the root, but what? Root supports you." Leviticus 25:47. So again, back to this. "So if a stranger or a sojourner with you becomes rich, and your brother beside him becomes poor, and he sells himself to the stranger or sojourner with you, or to a member of the stranger's clan, then after he is sold, he may be redeemed. One of his brothers may redeem him. Of his uncle or his cousin may redeem him, or a close relative from his clan he may redeem him, or if he grows rich, he may redeem himself." Go down to verse 50. "So he shall calculate with his buyer from the year when he sold himself to him until the year of Jubilee, and the price of his sale shall vary with the number of years, and for the time he was with his owner shall be rated as the time of a hired servant. So if there are still many years left, he shall pay proportionately for his redemption some of his sale price. And if there remain but a few years until the year of Jubilee, he shall calculate and pay for the redemption in proportion to the year of service. Verse 53. He shall treat him as a servant hired year by year. He shall not rule ruthlessly over him in your sight. And if he is not redeemed by these means, then he and his children with him shall be released when? The year of Jubilee. The interesting, even if the debt wasn't paid in the year of Jubilee, he was free. So again, we have the point. If in Jubilee, it's a freedom, a redemption, and a return, acknowledging by all. None of us belong to ourselves or each other. We belong to Yahweh. Right? Okay. So Hebrews 9. Let's take a quick look at this. It says, this is why the first covenant too was inaugurated with blood. So after Moshe proclaimed every command of the Torah to all the people, he took the blood of the calves with some of the water, and he used the scarlet wool and the hyssop to sprinkle both the scroll itself and all the people. And he said, listen to this phrasing, this is the blood of the covenant which God has ordained for you. Verse 21. Likewise, he sprinkled with the blood both the tent and all the things used in its ceremonies. In fact, according to the Torah, almost everything is purified with blood. Indeed, without the shedding of blood, there is no what? There's no forgiveness of sin. I want to draw your attention to something here. Because Hebrews 9 in this passage of Scripture right here, it's talking about Yom Kippur. And it's talking about your high priest going in and paying the price with the means of his own blood to set you free, not just physically, but even internally, to cleanse your conscience so that you can serve Yahweh. Not just to pay an atonement for here and now, but an atonement for all. Okay? Not a year by year by year, but done. Right? This is the price that Yeshua paid for us. Now look, this word here where it says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Some translations say, without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. What's the point given here? There's a connection, again, like I said in Hebrews 9, to Yom Kippur and all that. Because where it says there is no forgiveness of sins, this word, the Greek word that's used there is aphesis, which means freedom or pardon, deliverance, liberty, remission. But as well, the related Hebrew word that's used here is yovel. Consider this for a moment. What's being said here is without the shedding of blood, without the means of atonement being done here, there cannot be any yovel. There cannot be a returning home, a right of redemption, going back to Yahweh. This has to happen. When was the Jubilee declared? Yom Kippur, in the Day of Atonement, at the Atonement service in the 49th year. What's Hebrews 9 talking about? Yom Kippur. What we're saying is here, without the shedding of blood, there can be no Jubilee. Without the shedding of blood, there can be no atonement. There can be no forgiveness. There can be no returning back to Yahweh without that. And that's why Yeshua provided by the means of himself. Look, Leviticus 25:10. You shall consecrate the 50th year, and proclaim liberty through the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each shall return to his clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you, and you may eat the produce of the field. In this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to his property. Again, in this jubilee, there is a place of returning. There's a place of coming back. And the idea here is this. If you're not planting in the field, if you're not sowing, reaping, working in the field, doing all that, what's to prevent you from going home? See, what the emphasis of this is complete and total reliance on Yahweh, that there's nothing holding you back from going home. How many of us are good at making excuses? Well, I would do that, but it doesn't matter, does it? Yahweh is there for you if we just submit ourselves to him. But if we're making the excuses to keep us from submitting ourselves to him, we're not going to really fully walk in what he has for us. So we need to understand what it means to walk in covenant with him. Even following him, right? When they came out, Israel followed them through the wilderness, right? But how many of you know that some people were close to the tabernacle, camping tribe by tribe by tribe, and some was right there as they moved. They were all together. But Scripture notes some of those who were like on the outskirts of the encampments as they were moving. They were still following, just back there a little more comfortable pace. It was the people that was there in the midst of the tabernacle who got to experience really his presence. The other people were there, but there was a difference in their life. Right? Okay. So let's back up for a minute and let's talk about Ruth for a second. Okay, all this is tying together. Talk about Ruth for a second. Ruth was with Elimelech and Naomi. There was a famine in Israel. So Elimelech took his family to the fields of Moab. There, his sons married Moabites. And Elimelech and his sons, they died. So Naomi heard that Yah had visited Israel and had given them food. So she took her 2 daughters-in-law and told them to return to their families. Maybe they can find another husband. Orpah said, "Don't tell me twice," and left. And Naomi and Ruth went back to Israel. So that's right there we see she had good intention, right? But Ruth said, "No, I'm going back to Israel with you." I thought no Moabite was supposed to enter into Israel. How did Ruth make it in? How about the declaration? Your God will be my God, your people will be my people. She had a change of identity. Change who she was. How does she change who she was? By surrendering to Yahweh. The God of Israel is the one true God. I serve him. Right? Okay. So Ruth 1:22. So Naomi returned, and Ruth and the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. When was the barley harvest? It's okay, the answer's up there. You can say it. When was the barley harvest? April-ish, around Pesach. Okay? Because, the Aviv, they put the barley in there, so this was around the time frame here that they would have gone back. Around the time of Pesach, what's the emphasis of Pesach? Redemption. Being redeemed, the blood, right? It's about that. And then, and now we have the Pesach, and we're looking at the counting of the Omer, and then we're looking at towards Shavuot, and all these things are kind of happening in this time frame, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. So Ruth went to glean the edges of the field. Why could she go glean the edges of the field? Because Yahweh told the people of Israel, when you go and you gather out your crops, leave the edges of the field for the people who don't have. So that way they can come and they have access to food. If they don't have any other means or any way to get it, there it is. They can come get what they need. So when you glean the edges of their field, you had those, I'm sure, that would glean all the way up to like one row stalks, one. I'm leaving the edge, literally, But I'm sure there are those as well who said, don't go all the way to the edge, leave the corners, and they would, leave a good amount for those who would. Okay? And again, it's your heart in the situation, right? Okay, so what happens now? So Ruth went to glean the edges of the field according to the Torah, Leviticus 23, verse 22. This is speaking after talking about Shavuot. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not make the clean riddance of the corners of your field when you reap, neither shall you gather any gleaning of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am Yahweh your God. So again, where he says, you shall do this for no other reason than I am your God. In other words, because we serve Yahweh, this is what we do. Why? Because he had a purpose for it. And so many things that Yahweh has asked us to do, it's not just for us, it's for others as well. It's for helping to make a way, right? Okay. So, Ruth 2:3. So she set out and she went and she gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the clan of Elimelech. He was a relative. So Boaz asked who she was and then approached her. So again, he's like, okay, there's someone gathering out there. I don't know who that is. Who is that over there? And so they said who it was. You know, this is basically Elimelech's daughter-in-law. Oh, so where's her husband? Oh, he died. Oh, so she's gathering because she has no other means to get something, right? So now this is where we're at. All right, Ruth 2:8. Then Boaz says to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." And then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before." See that? So he says, you're going to be safe here. You're going to be protected here. We'll look out for you. Take what you need. But, if you go out to somewhere else, I can't protect you. Okay, so stay in here. We'll make sure you have what you need. Take what you need. And if you get thirsty, there's water and there's the food. Take what you need. And if you need anything else, just let us know. He's making sure she's taken care of. So what happens next? So Boaz invites Ruth to eat with them. And he also told his young men to let her glean among the sheaves. Actually, check this out, pull some of the bundles out for her to glean. Come on. He's like, so the corners and the edges of the field, it's here, leave that one for her. Like, 2 for me, 2 for her, 3 for me, 3 for her, kind of. He's like, oh, guys, just go ahead and pull what you need. Just, throw some to the side so she can grab it. Talk about a quick harvest, right? Just make life easy. I don't know if you ever harvested something like that. Oh, there it is. Just pick it up. All right, so what happens next? Ruth 2:19. So when her mother-in-law says to her, "So where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the men that took notice of you." She's like, "You got a lot of stuff here. Where you been? What's going on?" And she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name whom I worked today was Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by Yahweh, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi says to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our" what? Redeemers. Okay, Ruth 3:10. So he says, "Blessed be you of Jehovah, my daughter. You have dealt more kindly than at the latter end than at the beginning, not to go after young men, either poor nor rich." And again, Ruth went to Boaz, and it brings up the right of redemption to him, essentially, right? "And so, my daughter, do not fear. All that you say I will do to you. For all the gate of my people know that you are an able woman. And now surely it is true that I am a kinsman redeemer, but there is also a redeemer nearer than I. So stay tonight, and it shall be in the morning. If he will redeem you, he will redeem. And if he does not delight to redeem you, as Jehovah lives, then I will redeem you. So lie down until morning." So she goes to him and basically brings up the right of redemption, and he says, "Well, yeah, I'd love to, but there is someone who actually has the right more than I do. So if he wants to redeem you, then he will redeem you. But if he chooses not to, then I will." Okay. So now he has to go talk to him. So what does that look like? So Boaz goes to the gate. Why to the gate? Because that's where business transactions were done, at the gates, because that's where the elders were for the city. This is where legal things were done, what they allowed in and out of the city and back and forth, right? Okay. What was written on the gates, by the way? They're supposed to have the Torah. It's supposed to be written on the gates, on the doors and on the gates. Why? To remind them of their pursuit of justice and righteousness, right? Okay. So Boaz goes to the gate, and he waits for his brother. And Boaz asked him if he would redeem or purchase his brother's field. This would benefit Naomi. Now, see, he's like, so there's a field out there that's owned by a brother, but, someone needs to purchase the field. And if it's purchased, then, that's going to help Naomi. So what does his brother think? Business transaction. I could use some more land, more crops, more money, right? But what's the fine print? So he said he would. And then Boaz said, oh, by the way, the deal comes with Ruth. And then he says, that's too much. Can't do that. Right? So what happens? The Redeemer was to raise up a name for his brother so that his brother's family can continue. Notice that. The Redeemer was to raise up a name for his brother so that his brother's name would continue, not his own. So here, this was a selfish act to not help his brother. This is the way it would have been considered. So now what? Well, Boaz already said he would redeem, right? So what happens? Take a look at it. Ruth 4. Verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and Jehovah gave her conception, and she bore a son. And the woman says to Naomi, blessed be Jehovah, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be called in Israel. And may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you has borne him, who was better to you than 7 sons. And Naomi took the child, laid him in her bosom, and became a nurse to him. In verse 17, and the neighboring women gave him a name, saying, this is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of whom? Jesse, who is the father of David, who is in the lineage of Yeshua. How poetic that an act of redemption would bring forth the Redeemer of Israel. See, this is Yahweh trying to show us something. This is him trying to teach us why he's doing for us what he did and why it had to be that way. He's fine, brother. Don't go out on my account. He's fine. So, Exodus 6. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am Yahweh, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. And I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am Yahweh your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Yitzhak, to Yaakov. I will give it to you for possession. I am Yahweh. So, Job 19:25 declares of your Redeemer, I know my Redeemer what? Lives, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. That's it. Yahweh redeems you. He is the one, and when he brought them out of Mitzrayim, it wasn't just, oh no, my people are having a rough time. Let's make it better. No, he said when he brought them out, this was an act of redemption. He was redeeming them and showing you what he's doing in your life. So he brings you out to bring you to himself, to bring you to the promises that he has for you. My Redeemer lives. My Redeemer is alive. And he will stand at the last day on the earth. So Yahweh, he is your Redeemer. Look at Peter. It says, you also as living stones are being built as a spiritual house, a holy priesthood to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Messiah Yeshua. Because of this, it is also contained in the scripture saying, behold, I lay in Zion an elect precious stone, a cornerstone. The one believing in him shall never in any way be ashamed. Again, quoting from Isaiah 28. Verse 7. So then to you who believe belongs preciousness. But to disobeying ones, he is the stone which those building have rejected, which becomes the head of the corner. Again, Peter is saying, because we believe, because we're with him, that is our faith. That affects our faith and how we live. Because we believe, we are obedient to follow him. He also equates disobedience with unbelief. Believe will follow. So if we believe Yahweh has redeemed us, we will follow him. Isaiah 48. 17 to 19. Thus says Yahweh, who? Your Redeemer. Thus says Yahweh, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am Yahweh your God, who teaches you to profit, who leads you in the way you should go. Whether you had paid attention to my commandments, then your peace would have been like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. Your offspring would have been like the sand, and your descendants like the grains. Their name would never be cut off or destroyed from before me. Isn't Yahweh good? So when Yeshua redeems you, who do you belong to? If he redeems you, you belong to him. If he redeems you, he brought you in to be a part of his people, a people called by his name, a people set apart, people in covenant, people called Israel. John 8 says, Yeshua says, truly I say to you, everyone practicing sin is a servant of sin. But the servant does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. Therefore, the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. If he has set you free, you are free. How many of you say, okay, Yahweh set me free, he redeemed me, but like I'm still here, I still have the same job, I still have the same bills. Am I really free? It's like, okay, I'm free, but what changed? That's the point, guys. You're free, you changed. Like, well, I don't feel like I changed because you haven't learned how to walk with me yet. Now you're free. He's redeemed you. He's cleansed you. He's brought you out. Now you need to learn to walk with him, because you could still be standing next to that mud pit, but he showed you how to walk away from it. He pulled you out. You're there, but you got to learn to walk with him. He redeemed you. If he freed you, you are free. Now learn to live that way. Now learn to take it step by step. You know? So, what is a bondservant? In Romans, we find this. Romans 6:16. Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are the slaves to the one to whom you obey? Paraphrase. You serve what you submit to. Make sense? So either of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness. But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed. And having been set free from sin, you have become slaves of righteousness. So I'm speaking in human terms because natural limitations. For just as you once presented your members as slaves to impurity and to lawlessness, leading to more lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, leading to sanctification. When you lived in the world, you did it wholeheartedly. Serve Yahweh with no less fervor. Serve him wholeheartedly. You know, what you submit yourself to, that's who you really serve. So, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? You know, do we honor him? Do we live for him? Do we learn to walk with him? And that's just, like I said, a day-by-day, take it step-by-step kind of thing, right? None of us are perfect, but Yahweh is calling us to be perfect in him, which means just follow him. Learn his ways. And as we need to change, we change. That's it. That's all he's asking you to do. So let's learn to do that. Now this. We didn't finish back in Leviticus 25. Got one more verse. Leviticus 25:55. For it is to me that the people of Israel are servants. They are my servants who I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. If he is our God, he is the one who redeemed us. We serve him. Interesting that the same word for worship is the same word for serve. Same word for work. The Yom Kippur service is called the Avodah, the work. Why? Because it's a lot of work. You ever go through and read Leviticus 16, everything he's got to do? It's a lot of work. And it's got to be done perfectly, down to the detail. But we're not saved because of the work. We're saved because of his work. We're saved because of what he's done. We're redeemed because of what he has done for you. Now, because of what he has done for us, he redeems us. Now we live for him. This is what the world needs to see, guys. There is a better way. He always called us to it. We got to be willing to let others see it too. That's why Scripture says, let your light shine, so the people will see the light that is in you and give glory to your Father in heaven. So let your light shine. Why? Because that's what Yahweh's called you to. People of his presence. People of his kingdom. The people who serve the one living God. Amen? All right. Let's all stand. Numbers chapter 6. Yahweh told Moshe and Aaron that when you bless my children, I will put my name upon them and I will give them peace. He said, when you bless them, you shall bless them like this.